Backchannel on this Tuesday morning. It's the first day of the month, brand new everything, and I'm thrilled that you're here, and I'm thrilled that we're going to spend a couple of hours together. My name's Anthony Davis. We've got lots to talk about. We're going to work our way across the United States and look at some of the big stories making the headlines in local states and towns in the Americas. I'm in Los Angeles, California. Carla's producing. She's in London, in England. So we kind of, she's right there. She can see me. I can see her. You can see me. I can't see you. It's just as well I can't see you, isn't it? You really should put something on. So we're going to, some of the subjects we're going to be talking about this morning, just so that you're fully briefed before we start this operation. The Honolulu Star's newspaper this morning leads with U.S. military plans to appeal the state's emergency order requiring it to drain its Red Hill fuel tanks. We'll take a little look at that story as well and hear the story of a Hawaiian spiritual leader who's been warning about the dangers of Red Hill fuel tanks. Maine's Portland Press Herald tackling the forever chemical problem in Maine could cost up to $20 million a year. What is a forever chemical, and should we be concerned about it? The Justice Department won't reopen the federal civil rights investigation into Tamir Rice's death. We'll be discussing that. And also it's Black History Month, so we'll take a look at the origins of Black History Month by finding out the story of its founder, Dr. Carter G. Woodson. So that's all to come here on Backchannel on this Tuesday morning as we start this brand new month with aplomb. If you'd like to get in touch, then you can just wake up your device, say the word "say," and then your message. You can also go to YouTube, follow the show there, comment and watch the stream. And if you would like to chat to me and you don't have an Echo show, then just go to backchannel.tv on any web browser. And, you can send me a message that way. That's kind of how it works. So let's get straight into the newspapers this morning because there's a lot to get through. We're going to go to the Star Advertiser in Hawaii and we're going to look at this story. The headline, military to fight state's order, official says. Yes, the U.S. military plans to appeal the state's emergency order requiring it to drain its Red Hill fuel tanks. A decision that was met on Monday with swift rebuke by its members of the congressional delegation of the State Department of Health and groups that have long fought for the tank's removal. So it was Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks in a statement yesterday. She said the U.S. Department of Defense is on an aggressive schedule to analyze its fuel reserves. Oh, Andrea, good morning. Jessica, good morning. Thank you for joining us. She's analysing the fuel reserves in the Pacific within the next 60 days so that the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, can make a decision on the long-term future of Red Hill. And that includes the option of permanently draining the tanks. I mean, this is very interesting, isn't it? Because there's all this infrastructure that we don't really know about. The stuff that's going on under the sea, like the Little Mermaid. We just don't know about it. And so here it turns out that, there's this contaminated drinking water, there's jet fuel going from the Red Hill tanks that's getting into the systems, it's causing problems at Pearl Harbor. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that we can look at in this story. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later in more detail. Hopes rise as Omicron trends down. Yes, Hawaii County Mayor Mitch Roth expressed optimism on Monday about the current downward trend in daily coronavirus case counts and the anticipated return of larger events. I don't know, I'm nervous. Any more than 3 people and I start to get a little twitchy. You don't want me getting twitchy. I was reading this morning that BA2, which is the Omicron variant, the sub mutation of Omicron BA1, they're now saying is actually potentially more deadly than the original Omicron 2.0. So don't count your chickens before they've been vaccinated. Oh yeah, coronavirus has been around for years, hasn't it? I mean, it's only really just, COVID-19 obviously was named 19 because it came out in 2019, we assume. We assume. They might revise it to COVID-18, COVID-17. I mean, they had COVID-19 17, didn't they? Oh, that was 1918. Do you remember Donald Trump always got the year wrong? Do you remember? He'd always talk about 1917 and everyone was like, it's 1918. Why are you saying 1917? It was 1918. And he literally just kept at it. It's almost like because he said it, it must be true. You know, there are people like that who are so convinced of themselves that if they say it out loud, it must be true. Like the Holocaust deniers that we were discussing yesterday. Never happened. Really? Well, if I say it, must be true. Lunatic. City opens new 26-unit quarantine facility. This is the county of Honolulu, opened a second isolation and quarantine facility in Ua Beach on Monday to accommodate those who've been infected by COVID and need a space to distance themselves from others. That's nice. You could literally go to Hawaii and get a free holiday. In a very nice beachside accommodation, all you need to do is have a little COVID. 26 units. West Loch facility will be an addition to the city's other isolation and quarantine facility at Harbour Arms Hotel. On the harbour, lovely harbour, a little, privacy, no kids running around, no noise. I mean, if I could book it now, I would book it now. A little trip to Honolulu for some peace and quiet for 2 weeks. They bring you your food, you don't even have to leave the room. Perfect. Stacey, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Okay, let's move on with our newspapers now because that was Honolulu done. Let's move to Hawaii itself. The West Hawaii Today. I love that we're doing Hawaii today. I mean, it's interesting, considering that Donald Trump didn't think that it was one of the United States. If he's watching the show, he'll be like, why are you doing Hawaiian newspapers? This is an American show. Yes, my friend, yes. Building permits set to expire. Approvals, some dating back 40 years, to be voided as county streamlines permitting process. On the road, monk seal transported from Oahu to Kona for care. Wow. A monk seal. A juvenile monk seal called N2. What a shame. Why can't they give it a nice name? Why can't they give it a nice name? N2. My daughter was actually called a name like that before we got round to naming her. She was called D1. Seriously. That's what my daughter was called. It was written on a label on the outside of the incubator. D1. I was like, and I actually thought for a moment that maybe we should just call her that, because I'm a Star Wars fan, there's R2-D2, so I could call her R2-D1. I mean, it's not a bad idea. Don't know why I didn't push for it. The marine mammal, I'm talking about the seal again, not my child. The Marine Mammals Center recently admitted an endangered Hawaiian monk seal suffering from fishing gear ingestion and moderate malnutrition to its Kaiola facility within the Natural Energy Laboratory in Hawaii of Hawaii Authority. The juvenile male monk seal, known by researchers as N2, was listed on Monday to be in stable condition. The ingested fishing gear clearly impacted this monk seal's condition, and we're hopeful that a successful procedure will see this animal on the road to recovery. Why is fishing gear being left at sea? I mean, this is a big thing, isn't it, for conservation purposes? It's like a huge thing. The fishing gear that gets left at sea for seals to ingest and to get sick, and for endangered species to ingest. Just raising my seat a little bit. Not that it made any difference, I just felt it pop down again. What's the point? Okay, and also Omicron amps up concerns about long COVID. Do you know there's been a lot of writing in the last 24 hours about long COVID, because I think they're starting to work out how it happens, what causes it. It says more than a year after a bout with COVID-19, Rebecca Hogan still suffers from severe brain fog, pain and fatigue that leave her unable to do her nursing job or handle household activities. Long COVID has her questioning her worth as a wife and mother. Is this permanent? Is this the new norm? Said the 41-year-old. New York woman whose 3 children and husband also have signs of the condition. I want my life back, she says. More than a third of COVID-19 survivors, by some estimates, will develop such lingering problems. With Omicron sweeping across the globe, scientists are racing to pinpoint the cause of the bedeviling condition and find treatments before a potential explosion in long COVID cases. Could it be an autoimmune disorder? That could help explain why long COVID disproportionately affects women, who are more likely than men to develop autoimmune diseases. Could it be microclots? I mean, do you know what I think about when I read this? I think about those kind of anti-COVID people who are just refusing to mask up or get vaccinated or take precautions, who don't realize what this disease is capable of. Because it's the disease's capability that is really the most, debilitating element of this. You just don't know what you're in for. You don't know what you might get. You don't know what version of coronavirus you could get. You could get it mild, but it could completely decimate you, as it did a friend of mine in London who still can, he's in a wheelchair. He's had COVID now for over 2 years. And it makes me think that maybe we still have not done a good enough job with the messaging, to explain to people what you're dicing with death, literally. Stacey's having meatloaf with mashed potatoes, corn and cookies this morning. She's also dicing with death. You don't know what's in that meatloaf. This is going to be a difficult one to recover from. This really is. It's going to be a difficult one to recover from. I'm going to do my best. Thank you, Stacey. You enjoy your meatloaf. You eat that thing fast, like a bat out of hell. So that's the West Hawaii today. Let's move on to another newspaper. Quick! Idaho. The Idaho Statesman now. I realized that, we were trying to work out the pronunciation of Boise the other day. I realized I have a friend who lives in Boise. Who knew? Who knew? Idaho Statesman leads with West Ada Senior pushes to add mental health days for students. Yes, Alexandra Assay has seen her peers struggling with mental health. She says friends have come to her who feel like they no longer want to live. She read heartbreaking stories about students across the Treasure Valley who died by suicide, and she's heard from adults who are downplaying the importance of mental health, saying kids should just toughen up. The pandemic only made things worse, she said. I see with my own eyes, and it's truly a crisis happening. She's an Eagle High School senior. She soon learned about the lack of mental health resource available in Idaho and wanted to find a way to help. So as part of her senior project, the 17-year-old started an online campaign for West Ada School District to add mental health days for students. Those additional excused absences would give students more flexibility to stay home when they need to, and under her proposal, get connected to services they need. I mean, look, children are suffering depression, anxiety, more now than ever before. And of course, it's been exacerbated by coronavirus. But, the pressure of school, competition, peer pressure. It's who'd want to be 17 right now? I mean, I'm 22, obviously, so it's in my recent past. Idaho committee turns down Texas-style abortion legislation. Yes, it says Idaho lawmakers on Monday shot down legislation modeled after a recent Texas law that allowed people to sue abortion providers for procedures after a fetal heartbeat was detected. The Idaho proposal would have allowed only family members to sue abortion providers for damages if they perform an abortion 5 or 6 weeks of pregnancy when a fetal heartbeat typically can be detected. A motion to introduce the bill in a legislative committee failed on a tie vote. I'm kind of lost for words, It's like, I just keep trying to tell myself, are we living in 2022? Or are we living in like 1959? Do you know what I mean? It's like, we haven't just like gone back 4 years or 10 years. Roe v. Wade came out in 1973, right? That is 48 years ago. We're winding the clock back more than half a century here in America. Nowhere else. Nowhere else. Just here in America. Governor Little activates Idaho National Guard for COVID-19. The governor, Brad Little. For some reason in my head, I imagine him like activating like little guards because of his name, like just like little toy soldiers. Bring on the toy soldiers! He announced the National Guard would assist Primary Health and the Idaho Department of Correction, which are experiencing staffing shortages as many employees are out sick due to COVID-19. It's the 4th time during the pandemic that the Idaho National Guard has been deployed. Wonderful. Wonderful. Let's just militarize the whole state. Okay, let's go to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution now. If you want to message me, by the way, just go to backchannel.tv. You can send your message there as well. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution leads with state COVID-19 deaths on the rise. The highly contagious Omicron variant has pushed the daily average of U.S. COVID-19 deaths higher than last fall's Delta wave, as the nation nears a chilling milestone of 900,000 coronavirus deaths. Plea deal rejected for Arbery killer. Yeah, this is a very interesting story. This is the federal judge who on Monday rejected a plea agreement for the man found guilty of murdering Ahmaud Arbery, just 1 week before he's also due to stand trial for federal hate crimes. During a court hearing in Brunswick, U.S. District Judge Lisa Godby Wood accepted a guilty plea by Travis McMichael to a hate crimes charge. The agreement would have locked her into sentencing McMichael and his father, who was supposed to plead guilty next, 30 years in federal custody. I mean, basically what this hinges on is the fact that they have now admitted that they executed Ahmaud Arbery because of his race and the color of his skin, which before they had denied. And now they've admitted that it was because of his race and the color of his skin. And so they thought that they were going to get a reduced sentence because they admitted the hate crime and all this. But Arbery's mother literally pleaded, for the judge to not reduce the sentence under these circumstances, because she said that, they just killed my son. What am I going to do now? I have to accept the fact that they're going to get a reduced sentence because they've admitted it. It's like, no. And so the judge took pity on that argument, and this is why it's a very unusual situation. That they're like, no, you're guilty, you did it, you're racist, you're going to have the full prison term that you deserve. Also, judge holds off ruling on law that helps Kemp's fundraising. This is a law that lets Governor Brian Kemp raise unlimited campaign contributions during his re-election year, including during the General Assembly session. May not make it to sign die in April. Federal judge on Monday put off the ruling on whether to stop Kemp's unlimited campaign fundraising law. I mean, it's just money and politics, they just do not mix. Where I come from, there's no money in politics. It just isn't. Politicians are all poor. They get an allowance, but they're still fundamentally poor. They're not living, some of them, obviously, Boris Johnson and his friends, they all have a very nice life. But the majority of backbench MPs, they get paid about £65,000 a year to work as a parliamentarian. And then they get an allowance on top for their additional, because they have to have a second home. They have to live in their constituency and also have an apartment near Parliament so they can vote. So I just don't know why they don't go to remote everything. Just remote everything. We should be allowed to vote for our president or prime minister with our phone. There should be a government app. So then you don't have to have vote by mail. You don't have to have polling places. You don't have to have early voting. You don't have to have drop boxes. You don't have to have proxy voting. None of it. You just have a government app, a highly secure government app. And you vote. Bing. Swipe, fingerprint, Face ID, done. Everybody. Why are we still doing these like industrial revolution period pointless lining up in the street for hours when we have the technology to do online banking? I can send money halfway across the world in a second. I can vote for a TV show, Dancing with the Stars. I can vote with my phone. Why not vote that way? It's like there's no reason for it. It's safer. It's a little bit like when we used to go to restaurants and they would give you a credit card at the end and they would go off with your credit card. And then they would come back with your credit card and a slip of paper for you to sign. Now, they actually still do that here in Los Angeles. But in England, they banned it. They had to bring the machine over to you, Dion PIN pad, and you would stick your card in front of them and you would never hand your card over. Because, a lot of these places were... An Italian restaurant did me one time. They clone your card. They have a little cloning device. In London, I got cloned in an Italian restaurant. There's another version of me walking around. Can you imagine that? And, whereas, it's safer. We couldn't get our heads around the fact that we were giving our credit card away. Like, we thought that was normal. To give your credit card to someone and then walk off with it. We thought that was normal. Until they realized that actually it's now possible to bring the machine to the customer at the table. So then suddenly we're like, oh yeah, well, now we can do it here and it's highly secure. In fact, we can tap. We don't even have to stick it in, we can tap. Oh yeah, I used to love those scrubbing machines that had like the carbon paper, and you would make 3 versions of the copy, and the top one went to the customer. And I always look at like the pink slip, and I'd be like, how can they even see that for their accounts? And then a human had to input that information into their systems. Simplify everything, reduce the workload, automate it, because we can. Not voting, no, let's go vote on foot, which is less helpful for disabled people, housebound people, mentally ill people, people who work in jobs that do shifts, the poor, statistically in America, African American, Mexican people are less able to get to a polling place because of the nature of their work. Put it on an app, Have a 12-hour period where the app works and cast your vote. 12 hours. Swipe. Pick one. Confirm. Done. What's so difficult? So then we have to ask ourselves, why don't they do that? Well, we know why Republicans would not advocate for that. It's because they know that the more people that vote, the less chance they have of winning. Because America is fundamentally quite a progressive country. And that is not represented in the Republicans in Congress or the Senate. They know that they are clinging on to a false majority. And that's why they're putting in place all of these restrictions for voting, because they don't want more people to vote, because they know they're less likely to win, even though it's proportional representation. Not interested. This is the world that we're living in now. Where people think it's okay to prevent people from having their free right to a vote, or indeed a woman's right to choose. It's rights, it's civil rights, it's human rights. It's stuff that I genuinely thought we had dealt with. We'd kind of come to terms with the fact that everybody should, if you truly want freedom and liberty and to be truly free, then you should be voting wherever and whenever you want. You should be deciding whether or not you want to keep your baby. All of these things. That's why I don't understand the contradiction of these decisions and these policies. How does the abortion argument sit with freedom? It doesn't. They've cherry-picking elements of religion. That's all it is. It's nothing to do with freedom. Freedom when it suits them. Freedom to carry a weapon. Oh, well, that's different. Okay, let's move on with the newspapers. Let's go to Georgia, the Telegraph. Oh, Stacey says you're going to give me a 5-star review. Thank you very much. What, for the meatloaf and the mashed potatoes? Thank you, Stacey. I appreciate that. The Telegraph leads with what's behind shortage of staff at state prisons. It says back in September 2021, an ad hoc committee of members of the Georgia House of Representatives, all Democrats, wanted to know more about what was going on in Georgia prisons. They listened to a string of people ranging from civil rights attorneys, prison reform advocates, to the formerly incarcerated, and calling into the hearing a guard from Lee Arundel State Prison in northeastern Georgia. At any given time, about how many people are on duty to supervise the whole prison, asked Representative Josh McLaurin, the leader of the session, as he held up his phone to one of the tiny microphones sprouting from the conference table. The guard's voice came through on the speakers through the ceiling. On a good day, 6 to 7 officers. And that's for how many people incarcerated? McLaurin asked. At the moment, it's 1,200 or so, the guard said. That's one officer for every 200 prisoners. Compare that to the ratio of one guard for every 15 inmates the Federal Bureau of Prisons treats as a baseline. It says when it comes to medical care, we lack the ability to get them into our medical facility due to the fact that we just don't have any officers, the guard added. Even something as basic as for hygiene as menstrual pads can't be reliably shared with so few guards. Ratios like that are likely repeat across Georgia's correctional system. People with loved ones in prison blame the lack of guards for everything from lapses in medical care to the skyrocketing homicide and suicide rates in prison. Meanwhile, the U.S. Department of Justice is almost 6 months into what is expected to be a year-long civil rights investigation of the Georgia Department of Corrections. From the start, understaffing at the state's prisons has been seen as a possible symptom of a greater dysfunction. I wonder what that is. I mean, often, I always forget the name of what do you call the person, invariably a white man in America, who runs the prison? What is the name given to the person who runs a prison? There's a name that you would give a prison. He's the prison. This is like a quiz with no prize. I want to say janitor, but I know that's not the right word. The prison. What do we call the person that is in charge of the prison and runs the prison, who works in the prison, who's the prison, the warden? Is it the warden? Warden doesn't seem like it's high enough up the ranks. I mean, this is a good game. This is a quiz with no prize. Interestingly, someone was saying to me the other day, because I was talking about why on television in America there are no panel shows. In England, we have wall-to-wall panel shows, where a whole bunch of people sit on a panel, comedians invariably, and they have questions and answers, and they laugh, they make jokes, and it's very fun. And my American friend said the reason that America doesn't have panel shows is because there's no prize. And people here wouldn't understand why you would have a show, like a quiz, with no prize. So it's just interesting to me. There's no panel shows in America, it's true. It's all we watch in England is panel shows. People just talking. Like having a conversation. Stacey's guessing warden, prison guard. Yeah, I'm sure there's another word for it. Apart from warden. Prison, warden, thesaurus. I'm going with that. Oh, synonym. I'm going with synonym. Custodian, screw, turnkey, keeper, warder. Superintendent, director. Maybe it's warden. Maybe it's just warden. But is the warden like the top dog? This is like a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire question. The music sounds like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire as well. Do you want to use your lifeline or do you want to phone a friend? There's a lovely photograph of a mural on the front of the Telegraph this morning. Spirit of Macon mural unveiled. It's a mural by artist Abraham Ababy and was recently unveiled in downtown Macon. The Georgia College professor's work was funded by a Downtown Challenge 2.0 grant. It's beautiful. Governor, that's what I'm thinking of. Governor. Not in America, they don't call it prison governor. They call it warden. No, I think governor might be used in the US. Interesting. I'm thinking of governor. Right. So in England, we say prison governor, and in Australia as well, because the Australian prison system is based on the British prison system, because you may know historically, I'm sure you know this, Carla, that of course, when in Victorian times, we shipped all of the prisoners to Australia. Do you know this? When we had a big problem with prison populations in the UK, in the like 1860s through 1880s. And so we would ship prisoners. British prisoners were shipped to Australia on. Well, yeah, it was so that they could, because it was part of the British Empire. But I just love the fact that Australia is like built on a nation of ex-cons, you know? Yeah, I mean, what a way to start a country, you know? What a way to start a country. To take people that were a pox on society in one country and say, well, you're not good enough for this country, but you're good enough for Australia. There used to be an amazing prison on the banks of the River Thames in London. It was called Millbank Prison. Do you know about Millbank Prison? It's where the Tate Britain is now. Okay, well, Millbank Prison was gigantic. You should look it up. It was a hexagonal building, and it was one of the biggest prisons. It was the biggest prison in London. And this is where they would start to ship the Australians from, because it was on the banks of the River Thames. They were able to take the prisoners just across the street from Millbank Prison. It's the site now of Tate Britain. Tate Britain is now a gallery. And the original site of Tate Britain was Millbank Prison, a hexagonal prison. And they would take these prisoners from there straight onto boats, directly opposite the prison, onto boats. And then they would take them all the way to Australia from the River Thames. All the way to Australia. I mean, I wonder how long that would take. I guess it would probably take about 2 months to get to Australia by boat. But that's what they did. They used Millbank Prison as that kind of in-betweeny place. You know, if they brought people from other prisons, and they would field them through Millbank. A bit like the opposite of Ellis Island in New York, you know, of immigrants arriving and being processed. But it was an incredible correction facility, and it was very famous in London in Victorian times. And I think it probably closed around the late 1800s. Am I right? There you go. POM is the word that British people refer to Australians as. And POM comes from prisoner of Millbank, P-O-M. Isn't that interesting? I don't even know how I know this stuff, but it's just in my brain somewhere. I've not had to recall this for decades. But have you seen what the building looks like? It's a fascinating building. It's a giant hexagonal. It looks a little bit like the Pentagon, I guess. Although the Pentagon is not hexagonal, because then it would be called the hexagon. Doesn't a pentagon have 6 sides and a hexagon has 8 sides, isn't it? Where do you work? The hexagon. Oh, that has 6 sides, doesn't it? No. So if you're in London and you go to Tate Britain, which is one of the first stops for tourists, the Tate is a wonderful museum, gallery, then you'll probably see some kind of sign that says that this building sits on the site of Millbank Prison. Does it say when it closed? I'm guessing it closed around 1880. 1879. 1880. That's what I'm guessing. And then they built the Tate Britain. I'm going to go with 1880. I love this quiz. This is my kind of quiz, you know? Guessing the year that a random prison in England closed. It's just so random. 1892, I was 12 years out. Boom. It closed in 1890, and I said 1880. That's so funny. It's such a stupid game. But it's one that I'm definitely winning. So there we go. Now, I mean, I didn't know that Pom came from Prisoner of Millbank. That's really interesting. I always wondered why we called Australians Poms. Hey, do you know something? My sister's nickname is Pom. I wonder if she knows. I don't know why we call her Pom. We just do. I'm going to have a conversation with her now. There you go. Maybe she's a prisoner of Millbank. Yeah. What, like CBD or something? CBT? She's named after convicts. It's such a shame. She's such a nice girl. She's in New York City at the moment, working. But she'll be back here soon. You know, wonderful to have my sister in Los Angeles and my brother. Wonderful. Everybody's, no wonder you can't get a job. It's 20 to 10 here on the West Coast, 20 to 1 Eastern. This is Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis. Thank you for your messages. Lovely to have everybody hanging out with us. Oh, the Pentagon has 5 sides. Stacey corrects me. Thank you. 5 sides. And a hexagon has 6 sides. So what has 8 sides? Octagon. Is it octagon? Yeah. Pentagon, hexagon, 8, octagon. Yeah. You know when you learn this stuff in school and you're like, I'll never need that. I'll never need that. And here we are, sitting here on the 1st of February 2022, and we're like, that's what that lesson was for. Thank you, Stacey. Appreciate your help from Texas. Russia, US exchange harsh words over Ukraine at UN is the headline. Yes, it says Russia accused the West on Monday of whipping up tensions over Ukraine and said the US had brought pure Nazis to power in Kiev as the UN Security Council held a stormy debate on Moscow's troop buildup near its southern neighbor. Yeah, it's all hotting up. I mean, they're saying now that Russia has over 100,000 troops there. I heard somebody be interviewed yesterday, I think it was an Ukrainian, who counted 150,000. I mean, this is a lot of troops. It's a lot of troops. Crazy. Okay, so that's the Telegraph. Let's move on to the Bradenton Herald now. The Bradenton Herald, which I always call Brandenton. I think it's Let's Go Brandon or something I keep thinking of. This has got a photograph of an iguana, one of these freezing iguanas falling from trees. We discussed this yesterday, didn't we? Oh, they're referring to it as a cold snap. A cold snap. No mention of climate change. Just a cold snap in Florida. Right? Not a clue. The iguanas, I mean, these poor creatures. Florida officials denounce weekend Nazi demonstrations in Orlando. Now, I haven't seen the video clip, but I saw a little thing this morning that said that Ron DeSantis refused to denounce Nazis. You hear about this? It says after a small group wearing Nazi symbols was seen demonstrating and yelling anti-Semitic slurs in the Orlando area over the weekend, local and statewide officials issued statements condemning their actions as hateful and disturbing. Orange Sheriff John Mina promised to thoroughly investigate any criminal activity by the demonstrators. "I'm aware of the anti-Semitic demonstration in Orange County," he said in a social media post. "I, along with the Orange County Sheriff's Office, deplore any type of hate speech. This hatred has no place in our society." Videos that spread on social media showed the group waving Nazi flags, saluting and shouting at a passing car near Alafaya Trail and Waterford Lakes Parkway on Saturday. The demonstrators were also seen getting into at least one fight in the roadway. No other newspaper mentioned this story. Interesting. Just the Bradenton Herald. Is there any stories covering the fact that Ron DeSantis, when interviewed yesterday or this morning, refused to condemn the Nazi protest? Because I definitely saw something about that. Oh yeah, this is a thing. Let me just see if I can find it, because I definitely saw it this morning. Refused to condemn it. Because, and this is the same as Donald Trump, they want all people to vote for them. They don't care who they are, you know? Okay, Ron DeSantis is trending. Ron DeSantis just refused to condemn the Nazis in Florida again. Wow. Ted Lieu, who's a California congressman, he posted 11 hours ago, "Dear Governor Ron DeSantis, I denounce Nazis. See, it's not that hard to say. Why won't you say it?" Is the tweet that he put out. The Orlando Sentinel has reported neo-Nazi demonstrations in Orlando over the weekend drew bipartisan condemnations from state and local officials, but Governor Ron DeSantis remained silent until Monday afternoon when he responded to a question about the rallies with a tirade against his political enemies. He said, "So what I'm going to say is these people, these Democrats who are trying to use this as some type of political issue to try to smear me, as if I had something to do with that, we're not playing their game," the governor said during a press conference in Palm Beach. He referred to the demonstrators, a group of about 20, shouting anti-Semitic slurs while waving Nazi flags near a UCF area shopping plaza on Saturday and on an Interstate 4 overpass on Sunday, as some jackasses doing this on the street, and said they'd be held accountable by law enforcement. But he also accused Democrats who called for him to denounce the neo-Nazis as fellow Republican office holders, including U.S. Senator Rick Scott and House Speaker Chris Sprouse, had already done, of exploiting the demonstrations for political gain while also touting his record of support for the Jewish community in Israel. And so they tried to play games and try to politicize. Why would they do that? Why would they want to elevate a half dozen malcontents and try to make this an issue for political gain? DeSantis said. Well, they want to distract from the failure that we've seen with Biden. I mean, all you have to do is denounce it. I mean, it doesn't take more than a second. But the problem is that, you know, Republicans like DeSantis now are really clutching at straws for support. And so they really don't want to kind of devalue Charlie. Hello, thank you for joining us. And Audrey, wonderful. It's Charlie's first time in New York. What they don't want to do is they don't want to lose the support of anyone who's a potential voter. So they are now prepared to embrace far-right groups that in previous years were considered just non-voters, non-starters. They would just ignore these groups. Now they're like, everyone's welcome. Okay, let's move on a little bit now. That was the Bradenton Herald. Let's see where we're heading next with this newspaper review. We've got so much to get through. It's already 12 minutes to, it's already 12 minutes to. Hang on, let's have a little look here. Yes, the Florida Times Union. Let's see what they're saying this morning. Election law's legal battle starts. It says the legal battle over highly controversial year-old election law that makes it harder for Floridians to vote by mail and to do third-party voter drives is set to begin today in federal court in Tallahassee. Voting rights groups are set to argue that the law passed by the state's GOP majority legislature and signed by GOP Governor Ron DeSantis intentionally targets black and other minority voters and violates their First Amendment rights as well. Are you spotting a bit of a pattern now? Ron DeSantis refusing to denounce Nazis demonstrating in Orlando, and voting rights groups saying that DeSantis is intentionally targeting black and other minority voters. Are you sensing a little pattern of like who this guy is? And how, if this was another generation, he might be prancing around in a hood in the middle of the night? These are not good people, and somehow they have worked out how to become governors of states. These are people you wouldn't give a shelf-stacking job to in Walmart. You wouldn't. They wouldn't pass the interview if they told you what they really thought about stuff, and yet they have managed to infiltrate the very highest levels of government. DeSantis. He's a populist. Questions abound with long COVID. When will the lingering symptoms go away? It says most people who contract COVID, the symptoms are mild or moderate, even non-existent, and they pass between a few days to 2 weeks. But for some COVID patients, symptoms never go away, or they resurface after weeks of apparent health. And Norman Studios hoping to reunite with Building Next Door. This is Norman Studios' Silent Film Museum. The non-profit group that runs Norman Studios in Arlington would like to reacquire the former stage set building, which is now owned by a church next door. Well, good luck with that. That's the Florida Times Union. Andrea, thank you for joining us. Charlie, Audrey, Joshua, welcome. So great to know that people are hanging out with Backchannel this morning. Where do we get to? Portland now. Let's go to the Portland Press Herald for Maine, and they lead with Maine teachers urge lawmakers to fix COVID sick leave disparity. This is a law requiring schools to provide 15 additional days off for pandemic absences, is being interpreted by some districts to have applied only to missed time before last October. As a result, some workers have had to use personal sick time during quarantine. Yeah, there just doesn't seem to be any joined-up thinking or precedent for this type of thing. Hospitalizations up again in Maine, but wastewater tests signal Omicron decline. What a lovely job to test wastewater. What a lovely job. That's what Ron DeSantis should be doing. That's what he's qualified for. You know? It says recent wastewater testing at 2 southern Maine locations suggested the spread of the Omicron variant could be easing. There were 382 people in the hospital with COVID-19, an increase of 30 patients since Saturday. 92 of those were in critical care, an increase from 86 on Saturday, and the number of people needing mechanical ventilation remains steady at 38. Is Portland's Green New Deal hampering development, is the headline. Why do they do this? Members of Portland's real estate community, of course, say a citywide referendum passed to promote affordable housing and green building is having a chilling effect on new development. But city officials say it's unclear what has caused a slowdown in new projects and whether it will persist. Housing projects can take years to plan, officials said, so it's too soon to know how the Green New Deal referendum's long-term impact what it's having. Other factors, such as the coronavirus pandemic and the labor shortage and higher materials cost, also make it difficult to draw conclusions. I tell you what it is, because we had this in England. It's developers. They stall in the hope that the law is going to change. That's what they do. The developers, because they're the ones who make all the money. They're the ones who make all the profit. They're the ones who, source cheap materials. They want to build the cheapest housing they can and sell it for the most money, right? So developers are saying the sentiment among their community is that projects once aimed at Portland are likely to migrate elsewhere. They say this because they don't want to put in solar panels. They don't want to put in cavity wall insulation. They don't want to do the additional things that will benefit the planet because they're only interested in the profit. So they sit and they wait and they stall and they purposely don't build in the hope that legislation will be changed. That's what they do. Okay, it's 9:53 here in Los Angeles. Let's go to the Fresno Bee because we are in LA. Well, we are in California. Clovis police arrest 3 for mail theft in 2 incidents. Well, they stole 2 mails. Fresno gas prices drop for now, but they might spike soon, is the headline there. An average price down more than 5 cents from the December price of $4.50 a gallon, bucking a national trend of rising fuel prices. But will we see $5 gas in March is the question. Well, you'll have to wait and see. Most places it's down to about $4.50. Not that I care, because I haven't put gas in a car for 5 years. Fight over California solar heats up on TV ads as Newsom steps in. Dueling TV ads, the threat of ballot initiatives, intervention by the governor, the public call to action from California's celebrity ex-governor. In a matter of weeks, a complicated, wonkish proposal over the price of solar energy has spawned a classic California political dogfight. It says in December, the staff of the California Public Utilities Commission released a plan to slash the credit paid to homeowners for the excess electricity generated by their rooftop solar panels. Besides getting paid less for their excess power they ship to their utility company, these homeowners would also have to start paying monthly connection fees of $40 or more. Solar advocates have complained bitterly that the plan will cripple the rooftop solar movement, which has put solar panels on 1.3 million California homes. Only 1.3 million. There is sunshine 365 days a year in California, and yet only 1.3 million homes across the entire state have solar panels. You have to ask yourself why. You also have to ask yourself why it's not allowed for a house to generate its own power and keep it. Because you know the way it works here, you basically have to, your solar panel generates the power, and then that is sold back to the grid, and you get a rebate on your bill. So you pay your normal electricity bill, but then whatever you've generated in solar is then deducted from your bill. That's how the way they do it here. But it's riddled with controversy. The whole point of solar, I would have thought, is that you can go off grid, you know? I'm telling you, there's a whole thing about solar. I think it's lobbying. I think they prevented Chinese panels from being used. I think that they artificially kept the price high. I don't think they wanted people to get solar here in California. I think they wanted people to continue paying, the DWP or PG&E or any of these companies, I'm sure that there's some dodginess going in there. A story about Russia and US exchanging harsh words over Ukraine on the Fresno Bee. And then finally, the Los Angeles Times this morning. They lead with single-payer healthcare bill dies in assembly. Proposal to cover all Californians would have been funded by billions in new taxes and federal money. Oh, this is interesting. Lawmakers declined to vote on a high-profile effort to overhaul California's healthcare system on Monday, putting an end to a proposal that would have guaranteed medical coverage to every resident by levying billions in new taxes. It was Assembly Bill 1400 by Assemblyman Ash Kalra, did not have the necessary votes to move forward ahead of a key deadline on Monday. Instead of forcing a vote that could be politically damaging for some of his Democratic colleagues, Kalra opted to let the bill die angering the California Nurses Association, which has championed single payer for years. It says despite heavy opposition and substantial misinformation from those that stand to profit from our current healthcare system, we were able to ignite a realistic and achievable path towards single payer and bring AB 1400 to the floor of the Assembly. However, it became clear we did not have the votes necessary for passage, and I decided the best course of action is to not put it forward for a vote today. And then finally, states' speed plan to close death row. Officials say dozens of prisoners have been transferred to work off their debt to victims. Oh, and Moderna's been given full approval from the FDA, which is good because that's the vaccine that I got. It's nice to know that it's finally been approved, after that temporary authorization. So there we go. Those are the newspapers on this Tuesday morning. We'll check in with the US news update, shall we, in just a moment, and just have a look at or have a listen to what's happening around the country. 13 just joined us. Hello, 13 in Indiana. Welcome. You don't need to have a name. You can happily have a number. My daughter was called D1 for the first couple of weeks. So that's what you do. Find a number and keep it. So those are the newspapers making the headlines. If there's a newspaper near you and you would like to, have us review it at any time, you can just let us know. In just a moment, we're going to look at Tamir Rice. This is the Department of Justice announcing that officials will not reopen the case of Tamir Rice, the black boy who was fatally shot by a Cleveland police officer in 2014. We'll look at that story after the latest US news update on Backchannel.
It's Tuesday, February 1. From the Volley Network, that's your daily US news update. I'm Anthony Davis. A Georgia prosecutor who is conducting a criminal investigation of Donald Trump has asked the FBI for a risk assessment and security protections, citing the former president's alarming rhetoric about prosecutors and the January 6 Capitol attack. Fulton County, Georgia District Attorney Fani Willis, who is investigating whether Trump tried to influence the state's handling of the 2020 election, told the FBI's Atlanta field office that her concern driven by Trump's comments in Texas on Saturday, when he attacked vicious racist prosecutors and encouraged protests in Washington, New York, and Atlanta. In a letter dated Sunday, Willis said her staff had already made security accounts around the Fulton County Courthouse and government offices. This rhetoric is more alarming in light of his statements concerning pardons for those convicted of crimes in last year's deadly attack on the U.S. Capitol, Willis wrote. She asked the FBI for an immediate risk assessment and protective resources, including intelligence and federal agents. She said it was important that resources were in place well before a special grand jury convenes in the case on May 2nd. Meanwhile, former Miss USA Chelsea Cright, who worked as an entertainment correspondent for the television show Extra, was found dead after falling from a midtown Manhattan apartment building, police said yesterday. Christ fell from the Orion condominium at about 7 a.m. Eastern Time on Sunday, the New York City Police Department said. The death was being investigated as a suicide. Your daily US news update is part of the Volley Network. To hear my live daily morning show, ask your Amazon Echo device to open Backchannel.
There it is, the US news update. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts. I just saw that there was an earthquake here in LA about half an hour ago. Yeah, it was a 3.3 on the Richter scale. I didn't feel anything, but I see a few people have tweeted about it and whatever else. The 3.3, it was 1 kilometer south-southwest of Cudahy, California, which is basically in East LA. I mean, these happen all the time. Anything under a 4.5, people don't really notice. And if it's under a 4.5, no one even, it's a bit like that scene in LA Story. Do you remember that wonderful movie with Steve Martin? Where they're basically at dinner, everyone's having a meal in a nice restaurant, and there's a 6.5 or something, and the whole restaurant is shaking and all their foods, and they just carry on eating. No one even mentions it. And that's kind of, I had to learn that here because I've experienced 3 earthquakes now where I really kind of felt it go. And you always hope it's not going to be the big one, but the small ones are kind of fun if then, no one normally gets hurt. It's kind of weird to feel the rolling, sometimes shaking, and other times a jolt. They come in like these 3 flavors: the jolt, the rolling, and the shaking. Please, I demonstrated that for you just then. So let's take a look at this story. By the way, if you want a message or be in touch, whether your name's 13 or Andrea or Charlie or Audrey or Stacy or Joshua or, whoever you are, wherever you are, welcome to Backchannel. Go to backchannel.tv and you can message me there anytime you like. Okay, so we were talking, we're going to talk a little bit about the Justice Department, which won't reopen the civil rights case, the investigation into Tamir Rice's death. The 12-year-old boy's family had urged the Department of Justice under the Biden administration to reconsider the decision to close the probe, submitting a letter from dozens of legal scholars. And on Friday, they notified, the DOJ notified the family on Friday that they would not reopen the case. And Rice's family last year launched Tamir's campaign to urge Department of Justice officials under the new administration to revisit the Trump-era decision. Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark, head of the Civil Rights Division, wrote in a letter to an attorney working for the family that the child's death was a tragic loss. But they stood by the analysis of career prosecutors who concluded the government wouldn't be able to prove a federal civil rights violation beyond a reasonable doubt. They said the United States Supreme Court has made it clear that in prosecuting a Section 242 case, an officer acted willfully if he did so with bad purpose, that is, the specific intent to do something the law forbids, to deprive a person of their constitutional rights. They said after viewing and exhaustively evaluating the available evidence in this matter in 2020, career prosecutors determined that the federal government could not meet this high standard, Clark wrote. So the family are slamming the pathetic feds for refusing to reopen this probe into the death of their son. And, you just have to have a little empathy, really, for what it might be like, if you're a parent especially, to think that you lose a child in this way. The kid was playing with a toy gun outdoors when 2 Cleveland police officers pulled up and shot him. The officers received calls that someone was wielding a gun in the area, and they shot him within 2 seconds of arriving at the scene. In May 2021, Rice's family began petitioning officials to reconsider the DOJ's 2020 decision to not charge the cop who killed Rice, Officer Timothy Lohman. But in a letter submitted on Friday, the head of the Civil Rights Division stood by the 2020 ruling. Samira Rice, Tamir's mother, said, "I think they're pitiful and pathetic, and at this point, no one is going to get justice when it comes to police shootings in America." Well, it's true. There's been one landmark case, right? Derek Chauvin, which wasn't even a shooting. It was a public execution. It was an asphyxiation by knee. But the point is that, I said this the other day, a lot of police officers go into the job because they want to shoot their weapon and get away with it. And if they weren't police officers, they would probably be gun fanatics anyway. And they're like legal killers. How do you shoot a 12-year-old child? How do you pull up, drive up, and see a kid? That's the tragedy, because psychologically, think about that for a second. Because we have children killing children, we have school shootings and the like, it's not unusual for a police officer to consider that a child might be holding a gun. Not a toy gun, but a real gun. And what I'm saying is that in other parts of the world, you wouldn't for a second think that anybody would have a gun, let alone a child. So therefore, you wouldn't feel inclined to shoot them. It's not a police officer's job to execute people. If you're living in a state that still has executions, there is a legal process for that. There is court hearings, there is judges, there's juries. There's prosecutions and defenses and convictions. But all of that is done by the police officer when they show up, pull their gun very quickly and execute somebody. All that whole process of justice is eradicated from the process. It is not the job of police officers to execute people. They are supposed to apprehend people or talk people down or use their eyes and look and see that the kid's holding a toy gun. In England, toy guns are not allowed to be the color of real guns. They have to be a bright color. Did you know that, Carla? You aware of that? I think toy guns in the UK have to be a toy color. They can't be black. They have to be orange or yellow or green or blue. They can't be black. And yet here, you can buy guns for real, which you can't in England, and still they're multicolored for children. So that a water pistol looks like a water pistol. But here they sell guns that look like guns, that are not guns that shoot water. And you can actually buy a child's semi-automatic imitation weapon, like a SA-80 or a AR-15. You can buy toy versions of those for your kids. I don't know what type of gun Tamir Rice was holding. I have no idea. But the point is that it is not the job of Timothy Lohman, the police officer, to execute the child, even if he had a real gun. It's not his job. His training and his skills should enable him to be able to safely disarm that child. The first thing you would do is determine if it was a real gun or not. So what has he done? He's basically taken the advice of whoever phoned it in and said there's a kid with a gun. I mean, whoever the person who phoned it in also has to take some responsibility. But the problem is, in America, because everyone's got guns, there was the thinking of the person that phoned it in was probably, well, that's a real gun. Not maybe it's a toy gun. So I feel like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Am I right about multicolored guns in the UK? Is that a thing? I'm sure it's a thing. You can't, I mean, think about that. It's such a common sense idea to have all toy guns have to look like toys. Yeah, the laser tag guns also look like real guns as well. I actually saw some kids playing like paintball the other day in the park, and those paintball guns look like real guns. I mean, they look a little bit like Bugsy Malone guns. But even so, is there no training for police officers to kind of know how to analyze the situation? And also, why are police officers so terrified of being shot themselves? I mean, I've often thought that that's just really strange to me. You know, wear a bulletproof vest. Like in England, all police officers, when they're out on the beat, they wear a bulletproof vest, and we don't even have that many guns on the street. I have a feeling that there will be American officers, police officers, who won't wear a bulletproof vest so that they can have more of a case about firing their weapon. Because they want to fire their weapon. Andy, thank you for joining us this morning on Backchannel. Stacey had to go. Thank you, Stacey. Hopefully that meatloaf is going to do its job and, keep you smart and fit. Oh, she had potatoes, that's true. I actually quite miss Meatloaf. I mean, I don't mean the artist. Well, I do mean the artist. I mean, he's wonderful as well and died of COVID a couple of weeks ago. But I do miss not eating meat anymore. Meatloaf was, there's a restaurant here in Los Angeles, which is actually called, what's it called? House of Pies. House of Pies. And House of Pies, I think, used to be like a franchise across the United States, or certainly on the West Coast. And I think it got bought by IHOP, because now IHOP is House of Pancakes, right? And I think that one was once the other. Anyway, there's one House of Pies left in its original form. It's a family restaurant. It's in Los Feliz, California. And it's wonderful in there. Wonderful. They do great meatloaf. You know, I'm almost tempted just to kind of eat meat for one day, just to eat that meatloaf. I would do anything for love, but I wouldn't do that. Sorry, everybody. I am a big fan of the Meatloaf back catalogue, I have to tell you. I do, you know, I listened to some of his songs yesterday. I really feel like he was such a contradiction, wasn't he? Because he was like kind of scary looking. You know, he sweated a lot. Do you remember he used to carry like a cloth to wipe his face? That was like part of his act. He lost a lot of weight recently, but he used to have a sweat mopping cloth as part of his costume. The kind of goth look with the sweat mopping cloth. And no one was like, Pavarotti did that as well. Do you remember? Pavarotti always had a cloth. What is it with people in their comfort blankets? Is it a sweating condition or is it a comfort blanket? Who else would carry a sweat wiping device on stage? Not Barry Manilow. He doesn't even have a drink. Did James Brown mop his brow? Did he have a cloth? He had a cape, that's right. He had a cape. Liberace had a cape as well, though, didn't he? You know? There's nothing wrong with a little cape, or even a big cape. Lee Evans. Lee Evans does have a towel. Lee Evans is a wonderful British physical comedian. He actually has a towel. Lee Evans doesn't just sweat in his face, though. He sweats, his whole body sweats. He's a proper sweater. But he brings a big towel on stage. He has it on his stool. And he uses a towel. I've seen him a few times. That's how I know. It's the things that we notice, right? Notice the sweat mopping equipment. I want to talk about the forever chemicals. I might jump over the story of Hawaii. Do you think that's okay? Well, I'll do it quickly. All right. Well, it's an ongoing story. We mentioned it in the newspaper earlier. It's about these Red Hill fuel tanks in Hawaii. The Navy, they're currently proceeding with operations to remove the fuel from its Red Hill storage tanks because there's been talk about it contaminating the water supply and this type of stuff. But I wanted to talk about these forever chemicals. Decaying infrastructure and pollution from toxic forever chemicals are causing tens of millions of United States residents to drink contaminated water, increasing the risk of cancer and other ailments, according to a new report. And the report basically says that it's causing brain damage, basically. It's decaying infrastructure and pollution. Now, the Republicans never spoke of this. They had literally no interest in it. And certainly under Trump, it was probably made worse because of all of those, reversals of EPA rules. But Biden made a kind of central pledge of his campaign and now of his presidency to remove lead from the pipes of drinking water. And, lead pipes were like 100 years old, and we don't use lead anymore. And we know that lead can be poisonous and contaminating and all that, But there's also pesticides. There's radioactive materials. discovered in US tap water. The Environmental Working Group reported this information last week. They analyzed data from 50,000 water systems from right across the US, and they said it's striking and frustrating how little is being done to improve water quality across the country. They said our scientific understanding of health has progressed, but our drinking water standards are not being updated with the most modern science. National US regulations for water, for example, did not include standards for a newer class of chemicals known as PFAS, which are used in manufacturing non-stick coatings like Teflon and firefighting film and other products. They're dubbed forever chemicals because they build up in human bodies and they don't break down in the environment. Small doses of PFAS have been linked to kidney, liver, and pancreatic cancer, weaker immune system responses, and other serious health problems. There's no federal drinking water standard to test for these PFAS chemicals, apparently. Well, I actually thought that they'd removed the harmful chemicals in Teflon about 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, to be precise. So now you can use Teflon-coated saucepans and frying pans safe in the knowledge that the Teflon is not going to cause you illness. But what they're probably suggesting is that people who have old pans that predate the law change are the ones that are potentially dangerous. And if you have a Teflon pan that is chipped or scratched, that's particularly bad. You need to throw that thing away. It says contaminated water in the US made headlines in recent years following revelations that more than 25,000 people in Flint, Michigan were harmed through exposure to lead and other toxins in their drinking water. Last year, the state agreed to pay about $600 million in compensation to residents, including more than 5,000 children who were harmed by the polluted water in the working-class city just north of Detroit. I have a Brita water filter in the fridge. It's a big one. And I have to, when it empties, I have to take it out and fill it up with tap water again. And I change the filter like once every few months. Supposed to do it every 4 weeks, but I'm going to do it every few months. And because it's still filtering, isn't it? It's still filtering. And so I use that. But I'll be honest with you, I don't worry about it too much. But I probably should. It's maybe because I don't drink enough water. You know, I drink a lot of tea, and tea boils the water. But, you know, there are experts that say it doesn't really matter if you don't drink that much water because you're going to get your water in tea, or you're going to get your water in coffee, or you're going to get your water in salad. Yeah, you really don't need to drink as much water as they say. If you're doing a cleanse, that's different. You know, if you're purposely trying to do a cleanse, then I can understand it. And when I'm ill, I drink more water. I increase my fluids because I know that I don't want to be dehydrated. And so if I'm under the weather, I'll drink more water. But invariably, I get my water from tea. I have 1 cup of English breakfast tea in the morning. Yorkshire tea is the Yorkshire variety. It's my favorite. And then throughout the day, I probably have 2 cups of Earl Grey. That's what I drink. And then in the evening, I have 1 cup of chamomile. So I probably have 4 cups of tea a day. I don't think that's a lot for an English person. 4 cups of tea. Carla, how many cups of tea do you have in a day? Uh-oh. 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 $10? Well, that's okay. With herbal teas, that's fine. But that's a lot of fluid. That's good. I probably have 4 cups. On a bad day, I might have 5 cups. But I'm drinking mainly Earl Grey. Not that that makes any difference. It's still tea. It's still caffeine. Isn't it bergamot? Is that the smell of Earl Grey? Bergamot, yeah. I don't know whether I should drink it or put it behind my ears. It says the problems outlined in the latest EWG report are slightly different to what happened in Flint, as contamination in that city was linked to lead pipes through which water travelled after it passed through a treatment plant. The EWG, in contrast, analysed data from water treatment plants to search for traces of different chemicals. Their report includes a search function where US residents can enter their postal code to see the raw data on chemical exposure from local water treatment. That's slightly terrifying, isn't it? I'm entering my zip code right now. Let's see what the water quality is like here where I live. Okay. Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. And it says... It doesn't tell me. Oh, it says the drinking water quality report shows results of tests conducted by the water utility and provided to the environmental working group. Oh, I see. You got the water company to test their own water. Oh, well, that's very good, isn't it? What a good idea. What a good idea. Tap water provided by this water utility was in compliance with federal health-based drinking water standards, apparently. The Department of Water and Power serves 3.9 million people. They found 9 contaminants that exceeded health guidelines and 30 total contaminants. They found, listen to this, arsenic that is 430 times the health guideline. Arsenic. They found bromate. They found chromium, which causes cancer. They found haloacetic acids that cause cancer. They found nitrate that causes cancer. They found uranium that causes cancer. Oh, lovely. This is lovely. I mean, now that I've read this, I'm not going to ever... Because sometimes I feel my children's drinking bottled water up from the tap. I'm going to stop doing that. This is horrific. This is horrific. I now have water anxiety. I'm telling you. I'm sending this to my family. You know? It's like, this is not acceptable to me. Not acceptable. Drink filtered water, family. I mean, this is really not. I'm worried now. Thanks for allowing me just to, take the time to send an email. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Is it important? Hang on, I'm nearly there. There you go. Done. The job is done. We're going to talk to Hal today, aren't we? Because it's Tuesday. I think we talk to him on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I'm looking forward to that. Your pal Hal is next here on the show. And we're gonna have a little check-in with him, see what's happening with him. Andy's joined us, and Andrea's joined us. 13 is here as well. Should we talk about Black History Month? Because I think, that's something that's quite important. And we're kind of, closing in on the end of the show. But I mean, I just wondered for you if like drinking water was something you really thought about. In England, the standards are pretty good. They banned Dasani in England. Do you remember that story? Because here they sell Dasani water all the time. It's owned by the Coca-Cola company. They banned it in England because it turned out it was just tap water. It was just tap water that they put in a nice bottle. So about 5, maybe 10 years ago, there was a big controversy about Dasani. And they banned it because they're like, you can't sell tap water and call it water. Call it mineral water or what's the other word? Mineral water or what's the other one? Mineral water or spring water. Yeah. Anyway, you can't call it either of those things because it's from the tap. And they were like, yeah, but it started in a spring before it ended up in the tap. And it's like, no, you can't say that. So they banned it. So you can't get Dasani in England anymore. But in America, completely different. So Dasani is everywhere. Everybody drinks Dasani. It's just a very normal water that you would buy. And people presume that they're buying something special because it costs a few dollars. And it's literally tap water. And it does worry me a little bit that, like, it's okay in one country to do something, and yet in another country they're like, nope, we don't allow that. And, the food standards across the world, they vary wildly. But the US has one of the lowest food standards across the world. There's this whole controversy over chlorinated chicken because they're talking about exporting it to the UK. And the UK is like, nah, I don't think we want that. And they pump water into things, don't they, to make them fatten them up. Yeah, the Dasani story in England was almost like a joke. It was so funny. It was just so funny that this was actually a thing. I really enjoyed it. I was like, who was foolish enough to buy Dasani and thought that was real, like, special water? But now they do this thing. What's that other water they sell now that everyone seems to drink? It's like called something like health water or, it's like water is water. Your body cannot differentiate between water that is from the tap and water that is from the spring. Your body doesn't know the difference. And it doesn't quench your thirst any difference. It doesn't rehydrate you any different. It's the same. The issue is that these things like arsenic and, various chemicals that are being found in drinking water here, it's unacceptable. I'm going to change my filter when I get out of here. I bought a box of filters. I'm going to change the filter. I wonder if those filters do filter out arsenic, because that's the thing that I'm most worried about. The cancer-inducing arsenic. Isn't it crazy that, like, the public utilities that serve us water, which is a basic human right, to have access to water is a basic human right, that they are serving us water here in California that is laced with 430 times the acceptable amount of arsenic, and yet nothing seems to be being done about it? Why is that? How is that not even like the first thing you're going to do to fix? What is the governor doing about that? It's a little worrying, I'll be honest. It's a little worrying. Okay, let's move on to Black History Month. It's the annual celebration of achievements by African Americans and time for recognizing their central role in U.S. history. Also known as African American History Month, the event grew out of Negro History Month, the brainchild of noted historian Carter G. Woodson and other prominent African Americans. Well, since 1976, every U.S. president has officially designated the month of February as Black History Month. I don't seem to remember Donald Trump doing this. I have a sneaky, serious suspicion that it might have been left out. Other countries around the world, including Canada and the United Kingdom, also devote a month to celebrating Black history. So it's Carter G. Woodson. He's a doctor. He was born in 1875, died in 1950. He dedicated his life to educating African Americans about achievements and contributions of their ancestors. So known today as the Association of the Study of African American Life and History, the ASALH. The groups sponsored a National Negro History Week in 1926 originally, choosing the second week of February to coincide with the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. The event inspired schools and communities nationwide to organize local celebrations, establish history clubs, and host performances and lectures. In the decades that followed, mayors of cities across the country began issuing yearly proclamations recognizing Negro History Week. And by the late 1960s, thanks in part to the civil rights movement and a growing awareness of black identity, Negro History Week had evolved into Black History Month on many college campuses. It was President Gerald Ford officially recognized Black History Month in 1976, calling upon the public to seize the opportunity to honor the too often neglected accomplishments of black Americans in every area of endeavor throughout our history. Well, today, Black History Month is a time to honor the contributions and legacy of African Americans across the U.S. history and society. From activists and civil rights pioneers such as Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth and Marcus Garvey, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X and Rosa Parks, to leaders in industry, politics, science, culture, and more. Even a former US president. I still can't believe that actually happened. Was that like a complete anomaly for America? Do you think that will happen again? I really hope so. But I do worry now, like with hindsight, that the whole Barack Obama tenure was an anomaly. Since 1976, every American president has designated February as Black History Month and endorsed a specific theme. The Black History Month this year is Black Health and Wellness, and it explores the legacy of not only black scholars and medical practitioners in Western medicine, but also other ways of knowing. Birth workers, doulas, midwives, naturopaths, herbalists throughout the African diaspora. Diaspora. Got there in the end. Diaspora. Fifth time lucky. The 2022 theme considers activities, rituals, and initiatives that black communities have done to be well. So, this is very interesting to me because I feel like there is an increasing amount of opposition to things like Black History Month. And it's a little bit like the positive discrimination that we were discussing the other day with Joe Biden choosing a black female to sit on the Supreme Court. And how Republicans and brackets racists are referring to that decision as racist. They themselves think it's racist. And my point is that it's not an even playing field, is it? Because black people have been persecuted and owned by white people. So it's not an even playing field. So the only way that you can bring black people to that equality, that level of equality, is to overrepresent them on their journey and on the journey of celebrating black history, is to overrepresent. Because white people by default are overrepresented. So you have to overrepresent black people. And this is something I was trying to explain the other day. In fact, Carla and I got into quite a nice argument about it. And I actually think I might have changed her mind. It's different in England, you see, because we required people from the Caribbean, which was like a British colony, to come and help rebuild the country after it was devastated by the Second World War. So in 1945, we had this ship famously called the Windrush, which brought British people who were from the other side of the world. Well, not the other side of the world, but far enough away from the Caribbean. And so that's why we have a big Caribbean community in England, especially in London, because we needed nurses, we needed laborers and construction people and engineers. We needed these people. And so they were brought through on these ships. Couldn't fly them in back then. And we refer to an entire generation as the Windrush generation, which was the name given to one of these ships that famously ferried people back and forward from the Caribbean. And there was a huge controversy recently under Theresa May's premiership where they basically asked these people to show papers. They wanted to continue living in the United Kingdom. It was so completely offensive and racist, and fortunately they dealt with it pretty quickly. Theresa May was the Home Secretary at the time. It was actually before her premiership, but she had to deal with it as premier as well. And so, we celebrate Black history in a slightly different way in England because for the last 70 years, we've needed this support and community. And so these people have become part of the fabric of Britain in a different way to the way they have in America. America's got a lot more work to do and a lot more ground to make on this subject. It's just different. In 1915, Carter G. Woodson traveled from Chicago from his home in Washington, D.C. to take part in a national celebration of the 50th anniversary of emancipation. He had earned his bachelor's and master's degree at the University of Chicago and still had many friends there. And as he joined thousands of Black Americans overflowing from the Coliseum, which housed exhibits highlighting African American achievements since the abolition of slavery, Woodson was inspired to do more in the spirit of celebrating Black history and heritage. Before he left Chicago, he helped found the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. A year later, Woodson single-handedly launched the Journal of Negro History, in which he and other researchers brought attention to the achievements of Black Americans. Born in 1875 in New Canton, Virginia, Woodson had worked as a sharecropper, miner, and various other jobs during his childhood to help support his large family. Though he entered high school late, he made up for lost time, graduating in less than 2 years. After attending a college in Kentucky, he worked in the Philippines as an educator and superintendent for the U.S. government, and he earned his bachelor's and master's degree at the University of Chicago before entering Harvard. And in 1912, 3 years before founding the ASNLH, he became only the second African American to earn a doctorate from that institution. Amazing, isn't it? So for this reason, we celebrate and we remember. And with the rise of civil rights and Black Power movements in the 1960s, young African Americans on college campuses were becoming increasingly conscious of the historic dimension of their experience. Younger members of the ASNLH, which later became the Association for the Study of African American History, urged the organization to change with the times, including the official shift to a month-long celebration of Black history. In 1976, on the 50th anniversary of the first Negro History Week, the association officially made the shift to Black History Month. And since then, every US president has issued a proclamation honoring the spirit of Black History Month. Did we find out if... I don't think that Donald Trump did. He messed it up. Okay. He did it, but he messed it up. Sounds about right, doesn't it? Every US president has issued the proclamation honoring the spirit of Black History Month. Gerald Ford began the tradition in 1976, saying the celebration enabled people to seize the opportunity to honor the too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans in every area of endeavor throughout our history. Ronald Reagan's first Black History Month proclamation stated that understanding the history of Black Americans is key to understanding the strength of our nation. And then in 2016, Barack Obama, the nation's first Black president, made his last proclamation in honor of Woodson's initiative, now recognized as one of the nation's oldest organized celebrations of history. He said, as we mark the 40th year of National African American History Month, let us reflect on the sacrifices and contributions made by generations of African Americans and let us resolve to continue our march toward a day when every person knows the unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And then a racist took over the White House. And all the good work that was done was suddenly undone. What a shame. I really do feel like we're fighting now. You know, we're really fighting. And to see a kind of Nazi protest take place in Orlando, Florida, and the governor not to condemn it, and to just throw it back in the faces of those asking him to condemn it, claiming it's like a democratic hoax. So offensive. But this is where we're at now. Andy has joined us. Andrea, Z, Milo, Andrea, Alex. Thank you for spending your morning with us here on Backchannel. We're going to talk to Hal in just a couple of minutes and get to see what he's got coming up in his show. That's Your Pal Hal with Hal Rudnick. We'll see what's moving and shaking in his world. I wonder if there's any movies I could tell him about that I might have seen. I haven't really watched any television. Have you ever done that? Got an entire weekend and not watched any television? Yeah, me too. I see television as being a kind of... It's like a very temporary thing for me, you know? Sometimes I put it on just to distract myself, like to stop myself from reading or working. It's like, let me just do something that is benign for a moment. Because the problem with television is that you don't really think. You just sit and you ingest it, but you don't really think. That's why one of my favorite shows of the last decade is called Only Murders in the Building, which was on Hulu, and it's currently, I think, they're producing a second season. But it was like a true crime type thriller, and it really made me think. I really enjoyed it. It was Martin Short and Steve Martin and Selena Gomez in that. I just thought it was so good. Only Murders in the Building. I miss it. I think about it now so fondly. I miss it. Choking a little bit here. I'm not choking anymore. I was, but now I'm not. Only choking. I've had to remove my cough button out of the equation. Now I have this cough button that I can press. But I had to remove it from the circuit because I've added a little thing to this and it doesn't work with this. Which is a shame because it's called the cough blocks. It's an actual cough button. Should we say hi to Hal? Your pal, Hal, come on in and welcome to the little blue box.
Darn glad to be here, Anthony. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Welcome. How's your weekend and how's your day?
Not bad, not bad. I am looking forward to another fun-filled 2 hours with the Your Pal Hal show. Otherwise, just ticking off responsibilities, obligations, my to-do list. Yeah, it's a little long at this point, but life marches on. That's what we're here to do. Just take care of responsibilities and then call it a day eventually.
I was just saying that I went an entire weekend without watching any television. Is that something you've ever done? I knew this would be a good question for you.
Yes, on a camping trip.
Okay.
Probably the last time I could say that was when I was in the Boy Scouts. And
interesting.
I was on a canoe trip down a river and pulling off and sleeping in the woods in a tent in a sleeping bag.
That's something I've never done.
Oh.
Never gone camping.
Gotcha. It's fun. I haven't been there in a while. At this point in my life, I don't know if I will ever go camping again. Maybe if I have kids, then I'll take the little ones, out to the woods and leave them there. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, my wife is not really interested. She'd rather go glamping. Are you familiar with glamping, Anthony?
I did do that once. I went to a yurt in Big Sur, and that was a wonderful experience. And the only compromise was that the bathroom was like in a block, but it was very near to the yurt, so you just had to go up a few steps outside in the cold to use the bathroom. And if you're over the age of 40, you're going to need to go to the bathroom a couple of times in the night.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm definitely good for usually one bathroom trip.
Right. So that was obviously a bit of an issue, and not having a refrigerator nearby. I mean, I suppose that was quite confusing for me as well. But I quite enjoyed that. But I mean, it was not camping. I mean, it was very luxurious. I mean, there was a restaurant at the top of the stairs.
Oh,
like
there you go,
a full service restaurant.
Let me ask you this: did you make any s'mores while you were there?
No. Is that like when you toast a marshmallow?
You toast a marshmallow, and then you get 2 graham crackers, put a piece of chocolate, like either a piece of Hershey's chocolate or nowadays I would opt for dark chocolate because I find milk chocolate to be the pedestrian chocolate.
Yeah,
and then you put the melted marshmallow on there, and you make a little sandwich, and then the chocolate becomes ooey gooey and melty. It's a camping delicacy. A camping delicacy.
Yeah.
I might add a little peanut butter to that mix.
Oh, really?
I'm a huge peanut butter enthusiast.
Me too.
Oh yeah, I find most foods to be a delivery mechanism for peanut butter.
So, I had some peanut butter delivered to me the other day by my mum when she was leaving LA to go back to England. She just gave me a few things that she didn't need anymore, and she'd bought Skippy. And I was like, you cannot eat Skippy. That is not peanut butter. That's just like sugar and salt. It's not And she said, what are you talking about? I said, look, and I showed her my peanut butter. I buy the Valencia peanut butter from Trader Joe's. And the ingredients are peanuts, salt. That's it. There's nothing else in there. It is just peanuts. And then I showed her the ingredients of Skippy, which was about a paragraph long, full of a whole bunch of preservatives.
Yeah, polysorbate glutamate or whatever. Yeah.
And canola oil and goodness knows what else was in there. And I just said, the great thing about peanut butter, especially for vegans like myself, you can eat it and know that it's not doing any damage to your system. And yet it feels quite gluttonous. It feels naughty, right? Especially the salted one.
Yes. Let me ask you this. Are you a crunchy or smooth peanut butter guy? Smooth.
Take a guess. Yeah, I'm a smooth. I'm definitely. I knew you'd get it right. I'm definitely a smooth peanut butter guy. But
I'm a crunchy. I'm a crunchy guy.
I knew you would be. I knew you have a little edge. You have a little edge. It's necessary. I'm so smooth, like stuff drops off. Just like nothing sticks. But I feel like.
Just like your dulcet tones.
Like my tones. So I like a gluten-free slice of bread. I like a little vegan butter on there. Then peanut butter on top. And then sliced banana. And that's how I start. That's how I start the day.
Oh, yeah. You're speaking my language.
Right? I knew we had stuff in common.
Very nice. Or I'll do a little peanut butter and a little honey drizzled on sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
Every once in a while, I like the classic PB&J, a little peanut butter and jelly.
Can't join you with that one, my friend. It's just culturally inappropriate for me to do that.
Gotcha. Yeah. Is your jam reserved for the scones at tea?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I love a marmalade. I'll put a marmalade on toast any day. And in fact, Trader Joe's do a very nice Seville orange marmalade. It's like a dark orange, Seville orange.
I'm not an enthusiast of the marmalade or orange type jellies. My wife, on the other hand, loves it. It takes me. I like my oranges in juice or in the fruit form. I'm also not a fan of orange. Have you ever seen those Christmas chocolate oranges that you break it open?
Big fan of those.
Oh, see that? Yeah.
That's
not
my
for me. Not.
That's my childhood.
Mm.
That's my childhood.
Where do you stand on the Cadbury cream egg?
Oh, big fan. You
Okay,
bite
yeah.
the top off and you stick your tongue inside. I mean, it's
There
a
you-
no. It's
that's
a
it.
no-brainer. It's a very special
Yeah,
thing.
I'm right there with you. I'm right there
I
with
wanted
you.
to ask you, because we've been talking about Black History Month, and I wanted to
Yes.
ask you if you had a favorite African American of a current or recent or history that who kind of sticks out for you.
I mean, that's a tough question. I'm a huge. I think Black history, first off, I just want to say, is American history, and it needs to be. It needs to be taught more. I think it's a crime that some important Black stories, many important Black stories, are not taught side by side with the just other American stories were taught in school. I think it's a crime that I didn't learn about the Tulsa Race Massacre until I was, just 3 or 4 years ago. I learned about it from HBO's The Watchmen.
Wow.
Yeah. Are you familiar with that whole story?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm also familiar with the fact that there's a lot of kind of schools that desire, and school boards that desire to erase history. They either embarrassed of it, or they're just racist and they don't want to, celebrate that history.
Absolutely, Anthony. Currently in Florida, there's this anti-white guilt law in the offing that they're going to vote. So yeah, but just a favorite, one favorite African American individual. I mean, it's so hard to choose. Maybe do you go with just a trailblazer? I mean, obviously, MLK Jr. did so much. I'm a big sports fan. I think Jackie Robinson had so much stacked against him, just as far as one person, to not only be the first Black man to play Major League Baseball, but to have to do it in such a way as not to ruffle any feathers in the time.
Right.
So, yeah, those are a couple of people. Thurgood Marshall. I mean, I'm a fan of President Obama, but we're just scratching the surface. I think it's so
totally
difficult.
I was gonna mention Chelsea Christ, who died yesterday, or the day before yesterday. Are you aware of her? She's the 30-year-old former, wasn't she a Miss America? And
Yes.
and I think she took her own life like 2 days ago.
Very sad.
And it's just the timing of that was just so remarkable. I hadn't heard of her beforehand because I don't mix in that kind of popular cultural circles.
Mm-hmm.
But I read the story about her and about her mental health challenges and all various things, and and it's like just the timing of that. It was so crazy, to have someone like in their prime who was doing so well and so positive and so full of joy to kind of to do that at this time. So I was thinking about her this morning a little. Okay, Hal, thank you. Sorry to end on a bit of a sad note, but you can...
Not at all.
2 hours to turn it around.
Life is beautiful. Life is sad. It's all the above.
Exactly. All right, thank you. What a pleasure. And you'll be around in a couple of minutes. So thank you so much. And
thank you, Anthony.
Enjoy. Of course. And so that's your pal Hal. He'll be with you in just a few minutes. I'm Anthony Davis. Thank you for joining me here on the Anthony Davis Show. I'll come back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific, and we'll do it again. Spend your day with Backchannel. That's all you have to do. Have a great Tuesday.